Hey guys, okay. We are watching the Animated History of Russia Part 1 by Suibhne. Suibhne? I don't know how to pronounce it. Link below to his channel. But yes. Let's just go ahead, start watching this. I believe I've said this before, but I can't remember. I believe I probably said it a bit in the oversimplified Russian Revolution video. I know a decent bit about Russia. I kind of know more a bit about the foundings of the Tsarist Russian state than I do about, say, the Russian Revolution or even pre-Tsar Russia and then that in-between period. I don't know much about it, right? So let's go ahead and watch and learn. See, I guess, the history of Russia. I don't know why I'm trying to fill in words.
Russia is the largest country on Earth, spanning an incredible 17 million square kilometers.
Big.
If you're anything like me, you're probably wondering how it got so big.
Suibhne's #1 fan.
And how it has become such a powerful political and social entity in our modern world. It not only takes the title of largest and most popular country and city in Europe, but also stretches far beyond Europe, across the Ural mountain range into Asia, taking up the largest portion of the continent. Principal history of Eastern Europe begins with the people the Greek writers
Okay, we're starting with the Greeks.
called Slavs. The first Russian state was formed when a group of Eastern Slavs, later known as the Rus, elected a Viking chieftain to be their prince in 882, in the area between the Volga and Dnieper river basins. The state was soon expanded into the lands once held by the nomadic
Called the Kievan Rus.
steppe peoples from Asia. The most important city they captured was Kiev, which is why historians refer to this part of Russia's history as the Kievan Rus. The
Yeah.
Rus spoke a
See,
language
I know
called
some things.
Proto-Eastern Slavic, which would slowly evolve into Russian and Ukrainian. The medieval Rus state adopted Christianity in 988.
What's interesting though is how this is being incorporated as part of the history of Russia. But if we look at the land that the Kievan Rus held, what we see is that very little of this land is actually Russian today. Just a little tidbit that I find pretty interesting.
When Vladimir I introduced the religion from the Orthodox Christian Byzantine Empire. This is also why the Russians use the Cyrillic rather than the Latin alphabet, common in most Catholic nations. The Rus state slowly fragmented into competing princedoms, largely aided by the death of Yaroslav the Wise in the 11th century. The Rus were often at war with the nomadic tribes we will just call for simplicity's sake steppe peoples. These steppe peoples are integral to much.
Yeah, I think it's a fair call to just call them steppe peoples because if you look into the, I guess, cultures of the steppe, they are so many. Because it's also like the steppe is essentially, you go here where the south of the red is, and then you like stretch it pretty much all the way across to here, to the borders of China. Even a little past is kind of named as the steppe. I think even the Mongols were considered steppe a little bit because it's a flat country, steppe plains. Like the Turkish conquerors came from the steppes. The Huns came from the steppes. The Scythians, they are so vast and diverse in their cultures. And I think even the Finnish were steppe originally, right? Because I think I heard something where, I don't know why I'm even going to this tangent, but I'm going to continue this tangent. I think I've heard some people say that Finnish is, the language group is more closely related to the Turkish language group. So, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've heard.
Of the history of Asia, and you'll see various factions of them popping up all over the place. Most steppe peoples originate from the Eurasian steppes, go figure, and were very good at horse riding and archery, such as the Volga Bulgars, Khazars, and Kipchaks. So with that out of the way, we can talk about the Mongols, who the Rus called Tartars. Under Genghis and Batu Khan, they invaded all the way into western Kiev.
Okay, we're already at the Mongol invasions, and we're only a minute 40 in? How far? Are we going to go all the way to the modern day?
Golden Horde, with the Rus princedoms as their vassals. The Mongol Empire quickly fractured into smaller khanates, allowing for the growth of more powerful states such as Poland, Lithuania, and the Grand Duchy of Moscow. By 1480, both states absorbed much of the Golden Horde, becoming more rivals with each other than with the Tartars. By 1547, Moscow had become a regional power, with Ivan the Terrible being crowned the first Tsar, the Russian word for Caesar. After all, they did see themselves as the spiritual successors of the Romans, and the last remnant of Orthodox Christianity. Debatable. Ivan...
Yeah, well, I guess by 1547, that would be roughly 100 years after the fall of Constantinople to the Turks. So I guess in a sense, yeah, they would be the last remaining major power in Europe that is of Orthodox Christianity. But obviously, Orthodox Christianity has firm roots in Greece and would remain there even while under Ottoman control. Much of Greece remained, if not like the vast, vast majority of Greece remained Orthodox. So they're really using their religion as justification for them being a successor to Rome. Like, the Holy Roman Empire itself is a stretch. And they held Italian lands. Russia does not have that. So, yeah, Russia's too far east. No. Not a spiritual, spiritual
after
successor.
The Rus who inhabited it. In 1580, Russia conquered the Khanate of Sibir, marking the first time Russia had expanded east of the Ural Mountains into Asia. The Russians renamed the mysterious new land Siberia after the Khanate it conquered. And do you think they stopped there? Well, spoiler alert, no. In 1601, the Russians faced a succession crisis as the beginning of the time of troubles. The country was in anarchy and in danger of being absorbed by Poland. Up to 1 in 3 of the population died either due to war, famine, or plague. By 1613, the Russians elected Mikhail Romanov as the new Tsar, establishing the Romanov dynasty for the rest of the country's history.
Hold on, can we just talk about that? How long the Romanovs ruled Russia? For 300 years. The Romanovs were the rulers of Russia. That is very rare to see. I mean, you see that in Eastern countries, right? You have the Qing dynasty, the Ming, you know, they rule for a long time. The Japanese emperor, supposedly, they've had the same, like, dynasty for, like, over 1,000 years. I feel like that one's a bit more arguable because, like, the Romanovs held actual power in the state. The emperor didn't always hold power, so really, of Japan to really kind of, you know, it's what you call really an emperor, right? That, you know, you got to get into that bit. The Tudors, I think, only ruled England for like a couple hundred years, if that. Maybe not even maybe just over 100 or something. I can't remember. So yeah, you know, I guess the Habsburgs ruled for quite a long time. I think they'd be the closest comparison to the Romanovs in terms of how long they ruled. But like France, England, Sweden, most of these other countries, you know, their monarch families changed, I guess, in a certain sense, fairly often, at least compared to one single family ruling for 400 years, right?
Michael ended the wars and began the slow process of rebuilding the fragmented country. From this point until the 19th century, Russia's economy was propped up by serfdom, effectively protecting Russia's rich and powerful by turning all their peasants into hereditary slaves. Yeah, history sucks sometimes.
It does, yeah.
By 1667, Russia had become powerful enough to win the Russo-Polish War with the help of the subjugated steppe peoples called Cossacks. They expanded their territory into southeastern part of Poland. The Poles and the Russians had informally nicknamed the area Ukraina, derived from an old Slavic word for borderland. Get it? Because it was the border between Russia, Poland, and the Cossacks? Very creative. Anyway, one of Russia's...
Hey man, people in history are extremely creative with their names, right?
most famous czar...
And then for anyone that's a writer or like even a fantasy fan, you know, you'll hear about people trying to come up with these creative names for their towns or whatever. And then you've got real history where they literally just like Alexander named like 10 cities after himself. And some cities were literally called Alexandria, the furthest east. Alexandria in the south or something like that. Oh, yeah, and you don't. They'll be cities, nations, and such will be named very plainly.
Was Peter the Great.
In history.
Peter was a reformer. He modernized the army, built the empire's first navy, traveled west and brought back ideas and technology of the Enlightenment, and also
Yes, he was very much an enlightened ruler. He was very into Western ideas and wanted to really modernize Russia for the time.
fashionable French clothing. He also expanded Russia's influence in the Black and Baltic Seas. The guy was basically in love with the West. After capturing a Baltic seaport from the Swedish Empire in the Great Northern War, Peter built a new city and founded it as the country's new capital, St. Petersburg. Russia also fought in the 7 Years' War, vying for power with their European neighbors. Another formidable Russian ruler was Catherine the Great, who was, well, not really Russian at all. She was born in Germany, and she killed her husband and seized the throne for herself. Her reign was one of reform and domination over the Crimean Khanate, as well as openly embracing the Enlightenment. In the mid-18th century, the Polish government collapsed due to a parliamentary limbo, and the surrounding Austria, Prussia, and Russia split the country in three during the Polish partitions, effectively wiping the country off the map for the next century. Just in time for the Napoleonic Wars. Russia, just like the other European monarchies of the time, feared the repercussions of the French Revolution and joined the second, third, and fourth coalitions against Napoleon, but they usually lost pretty badly. The French army captured the abandoned Moscow in 1812, however the Russians would not surrender, preferring to burn the fields that the French hoped to live off. After waiting a few months, Napoleon retreated from Russia due to lack of supplies before conceding a Russian surrender, and when the snow set in and killed most of the French army, the tide was turned in Russia's favor. Russia's territorial gains had become so ambitious that it triggered a war with France and England, who helped the Ottomans in the Crimean War. In 1861, Russia abolished serfdom in an event now known as the Emancipation. Also, in the period between Napoleon and the Emancipation, it is worthwhile to note that Russia expanded her territory into Turkestan, China, the Southern Caucasus, Finland, and Russian America. And were it not for the Crimean War, they almost certainly would have won the entire Black Sea. They really loved land. In 1894, Tsar Nicholas II and the mystic Rasputin, who people thought secretly controlled him, became the last emperor of Russia. There were revolts against the political system for many decades, and the monarchy was slowly losing its power. As an ally of Serbia, Russia aimed to protect the Baltic Slavs from the Austro-Hungarian invasion during World War I. The chaos and famine of the war led to the two Russian revolutions. The first deposed the Tsar and set up the provincial government, highly influenced by the Soviets. The Soviets were basically workers' unions inspired by Marxism.
And we know about them in greater depth thanks to Oversimplified's Russian Revolution videos.
Vladimir Lenin's Bolshevik Party came to power in the Soviets and seized power in the October Revolution, creating the RSFSR and the Russian Civil War between the Reds and the Whites. The Civil War led to the breakaway of Poland, the Baltic
really
states,
going
and Finland.
far into the history of Russia.
In 1922, the RSFSR was renamed the USSR, a much catchier name. After the death of Lenin, Russia's most famous communist-era dictator came to power, Joseph Stalin. Born in the old Russian Empire, now modern-day Georgia, Stalin was an aggressive expansionist, go figure. He had aims of spreading communism throughout the world. He also resented Russia's territorial losses during the Civil War. He killed and exiled millions of people he deemed anti-revolutionary. With failed diplomacy with the Western European nations, Stalin entered into the non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany, hoping to regain much of the land lost during the First World War in Poland and the Baltic Sea. On the 1st and 17th of September, Germany and Russia invaded and divided Poland in two, beginning the Second World War. Originally in an uneasy alliance with Hitler, the tide of war turned with Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union. The invasion killed more troops than any other theater of battle, and the German armies came just 24 kilometers from Moscow. However, the winter blizzard set in, turning the battle in the Soviets' favor.
And as we know from Eastery's animated videos, it wasn't really the winter that spelled the doom for the German invasion. But what we can say, though, about it is that it aided the Russians immensely because they did have soldiers that were veteran fighters in the winter, right? So that experience did aid them, and yeah, they were able to fight far more effectively than the Germans were during the winter.
After the defeat of Nazi Germany, Stalin held on to the Soviet-occupied territories, enveloping them into the USSR or creating communist puppet states. The Western Allies treated the Soviet bloc with suspicion, in which the Soviets developed nuclear weapons and became one of the most powerful nations in history. The USSR was the first nation to put a man in space during the American-Soviet space race. After decades of
Their
poverty and
animation.
political unrest, as well as involvement in numerous proxy wars with the United States, the USSR finally collapsed under the weight of the one-party communist state. The Russian Federation was formed as a newly democratic republic. The two most important Eastern Bloc states, Poland and East Germany, broke away from Russian control, and the eastern parts of Russia also broke away to form two new countries, Belarus, or White Russia, and Ukraine. The rise of Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer, into the prime ministry and presidency of Russia brought with it renewed foreign policy. Putin became involved in the Syrian civil war, the East Russian separatism movements in Ukraine, and the politics of many Eastern European countries.
God. Oh my god, I'm just realizing how long ago the Ukrainian civil war started. Jeez. It's already been that many years? Dude. That started when I was a kid. Well, not really a kid. I was a teenager when it started, of course. I'm not that old, and I'm not that young. Damn. It's been that... It doesn't feel like it's been that long since the Ukrainian issues have started.
Modern-day Russia's future is uncertain, as is the motives of its leader. However, the nation is in a state of peace, will be hosting the Football World Cup in 2018, and is emerging once again as a world superpower.
Great video by Suibhne. Suibhne. I can't pronounce his name. Good video. Yeah. I don't understand how this is a part 1 because I feel like he covered all of the history of Russia, so I don't exactly know what's gonna be in part 2. Yeah. Covered a lot of history really, really fast. Leave a suggestion down below as to what you'd like to see me react to next. As always, thank you guys for watching. Have a good day. Thank you.